All right. So I hear the exam was too easy. Did you watch the video?
No, I want my answers to spend on it, otherwise just get stressed about it.
I see.
I literally blocked it out.
So was there a specific question that was like a nightmare question?
Honestly, question two.
I don't know. It was all not good.
Yeah.
They were all
Like,
nightmares.
the first one was like that.
I think you did the first one wrong.
Huh?
I think you did the first one wrong.
What was the question of the first
The
one?
first one was like get the 6 out of the list with the catters and footers and stuff.
Okay.
I think you put them in the wrong order. I think you did. It was catter.
Oh, I needed to have them inside the, so I had the right things. I got you.
Yeah, I thought it was wrong.
Unless I did it wrong, it's certainly possible.
Well, it's possible. I was pretty tired when I wrote that. But yeah, now that I'm kind of remembering, I said it right, but when I wrote it outside in instead of inside out. Yeah. So what other ones were bad?
Is there a way that we can see them?
Yeah.
No?
We can't see them really great.
Really?
I know sometimes you have it set where we can see them as they're being graded, which is always fun. You know,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Well, I bet you it's the same way now because I haven't even started this class.
so
I'll get it done. I'm going to do it today. I have a 4-hour block this afternoon. It's going to all get done.
Yeah, we can't see them. So I completely forgot.
And I promise it wasn't just laziness, not kidding. It was my dad's 71st birthday, and my brother is in federal prison, and he for a while he's getting out by December. It's a white collar money thing, but he was having a rough time, so my mom called in an SOS, so I had to go in to cheer him up. This thing, didn't I already take it?
do it all the way.
Oh, whatever. All right, so that was that first question you complained about. What's the next one? Is list of divisors.
So I think one of the problems that I was having, I ended up just doing the same thing you did in the video where you just have a helper function that you add this sum.
Yeah.
But even in the video, you said like this should have 2 parameters, and I think that threw me off for a little bit
Right.
because I was trying to do it for a bit with only 1 parameter.
Well, almost always. So like this list of divisors, like the one you need to test all the values between 1 and 8. So you need to have something you can pass that to, so you have your counter. That's our pattern for counting from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 with recursive calls. And as soon as you get to the equal to, you just finally tack on the thing, don't make another recursive call. And that's the thing that the helper returns. I mean, you could have just pretended like your original question, list of divisors takes in 2 parameters. That would have been fine. I mean, because effectively that's with the helper function, that's what you do, right? The helper function has to take in 1 parameter that immediately calls your helper, passing it the 2 parameters. But I mean, that one shouldn't have been.
It wasn't too hard once I figured out that once I used that.
I see. But we've had to use a lot of helper functions in here, right?
I didn't know if it was legalized.
Why?
I don't know. I was trying to follow the instructions. The instructions told me all parameters.
It's like a function.
That's fine. So I was going to grade that function. So I should have said write a function and a helper function. That requires me to have to think about what the answer of it should be before.
I think you should feel like, here's what you want to do.
Yeah.
I just thought
Some
use a helper function given that you have the actual function.
Yeah, that was. So you're saying I should remove all the critical thinking, like just take your brain out of it.
No, absolutely not. It makes perfect sense.
Now, okay, so I think I mentioned this on the first day of class, but this happened even again. So former student, actually many of you probably know him, Noah Kurz. Just what's that?
In
So
general.
many people hearted that.
Oh, he wrote something in general?
Yeah.
Oh, he just told me about it the other day. I didn't see it in general. That I'm telling you, I've had so many students over the years tell me how what they learned in this class is what turned them into this better programmer and better computer scientist. And so if I took that critical thinking away from you, yeah, look, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I get paid either way. It doesn't make any difference. I could just give everybody A's and just move on with life. We could all get breakfast, right? but you know, I don't want to steal that critical thinking opportunity
Oh, no, that's fine. I just-
from you, right? In fact, it should be worse. I should make it worse.
I would prefer not have a.
Well, really, it's not to torment you, it's to torment Jason.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So,
I think I did pretty good.
on the exam, and I grade them with the names off. So I grade them one question at a time. So I just have all the questions. So that's probably, I'm guessing when I grade it today, you'll see up to date. Because after I finish question one, you'll see what you got on it. What?
I was just gonna say that minus the critical thinking to do it actually like recursion.
Well, I know, didn't I promise you when this class started that all of you probably came in sucking at recursion, and by the time you're done, it'll be difficult to not think recursively? We're only halfway through. Just imagine what it's going to be at the end.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
What's up?
I still don't like recursion.
Well, yeah, but you still have 8 weeks left. All right, so this one wasn't bad once you decided to get over your fear of a helper function. The fizz, oh, this one should have been easy. Fizzbuzz.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
remember
simple.
that.
It's just a cond with some questions.
Yeah.
If it's evenly divisible by 3 and 5, do this. If it's evenly divisible by 3, do this. If it's evenly divisible by 5, do this. Else, here's the number.
I think in the moment, it would go for the test would over. Because now it's not. Now it's not. That might be-
I hope
No,
it.
like, we haven't gotten through like 4 through 10 yet. I'm pretty sure those-
All right, so Fizzbuzz, not too bad. That was fine. Lambda calculus expression where X occurs free and Y occurs both free and, oh, that's easy.
I don't know what those terms mean.
Well, you couldn't even read the question?
No, I read the question, but then I gave up. I don't know what
I distinctly remember like really focusing in class this idea of in what situation does a variable occur? Because it was when we were talking about lambda expressions and the binding. So we were talking about the app expressions where you have a list where the first element is a lambda and the second element is the param, right? And this param, so this lambda would be like a lambda x, I just put an x there, whatever. This param gets bound to this x. So this is not where occurring happens. Occurring happens right here in the body of a lambda. So in this case, x occurs bound by that x. Right?
I think it was more the, like, if I saw that, I could have gotten it. It was the like opposite thing.
Oh, so you had to remove the critical thinking from this one
Yeah,
too?
yeah, it's the critical thing.
It's just suck it. It's like, look, I don't go to school to think. I go to school to give you a bunch of money and you give me 2/3 of the answer, preferably more. And then you grade it easy. That's why we're in school. That way, when we go out, we get hired, we get this high-paying job that we get fired from 3 weeks later. I'm not even out of training yet before they figure out that I'm an idiot. Because I never learned how to critically think. Yeah, so this one, this is a function, this is a x occurs bound here. So in this case, x occurs free and a variable y occurs bounded. Okay, so in this case, we would have something like that. So in this case, x occurs free, y occurs bound right there. And then what I could do is inside of, well, I can actually just have a second set of these guys. Actually, I'll just do it inside the body of this. So inside the body of this, I'll have something like a lambda, and what I need to have y occurs bound, a lambda y, I misspelled lambda. I'm gonna have it free. Oh, I see what you're saying. So here, I'll just say y. Oh, it's, what am I doing? A, we'll say A. And the body of this guy will be something like plus. That's actually not going to, that's not going to do it. I have to do it in two separate things. So I'll do something like plus all this crap. So there's my lambda. So here I can just say something like 5. And then I can say y like that. So in this case, y occurs free. It's not bound by anything. In this case, y occurs bound and x occurs free. And if you remember our lambda calculus expressions, we had, that was the grammar. We have 3 productions, right? We have just a number, we have a lambda, or we have an app expression, where it's a function applied to parameters. All right, conversion should have been easy, right? Actually, this was a fun conversion one because you could have used the trick. You could do, because we're dealing with octal and hex, right? So you can take the 1321 from octal and convert it to binary, 3-bit binary, and then take your 3-bit binary and turn it and work with it in chunks of 4 to get it to hex. So actually, that one should have been easy. What is a grammar? That's simple, right? Hey, didn't I say you should know what those are on the slides? Grammar is the definition of the language. Production is an individual line in our language, an individual rule. So lambda calculus expression would be the entire definition of the language. It would have, when I just described 3 productions, a number, lambda, a lambda expression, and an app expression. Those would be the productions. Just killing me, people. Oh, hey, look, here's an example. Here's a grammar. Here's a production. Here's a production. All right, so this required you to read a grammar. So write something that takes, that contains 5 numbers. So you would have had to have this production multiple times to ultimately get binary trees, which boiled on the number. So in this case, the numbers are the leaves when you have something that doesn't have children. Otherwise, the subtrees have a symbol followed by 2 bin trees. You know, so a single thing might be A 1, 2. That's a single tree. But in this case, I have only 2 numbers and I've run out of stuff to do. So now I can say B 1, 2, C 3, 4. Well, I only have 4 numbers. So I can't do anything with that. So now I need to go down 1 more level. So C, D, 3, 4, and then I'll make the right child of that one 5. So here's my root node, left child, right child. This left child is a symbol with 2 bin trees. The right child is a symbol with a left child that is the second production, and a right child that's the first production. So this guy is the second production with the left child of the first production, right child of the first production. And this guy is just the right child's just the first production. That's 5 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It makes so much sense. that you do it. I did it over the drawing.
I drew a spaceship, but I did it in ASCII art. So it's points. You realized it's what? Yeah, but actually, I think that might make it worse. Huh? Well, no, I'm just saying in general, because like I had a question trying to interpret. It's like, oh, well, isn't a binary tree this? I mean, I could have called this guy elephant.
Yeah.
So really, the skill here is how do you read a grammar? Because if you start off by saying, oh, bin tree means binary tree, now you have a preconceived notion what the definition of a binary tree is. And if you operate off of that, then this guy's weird, because now, in this case, well, the leaves are ints, but what's the symbol thing? It's just weird, because at this point, you probably haven't seen binary trees where the root nodes are letters, and it's letters all over the place until you finally get down to the bottom and you see numbers, because now you got this mix and match of stuff inside the tree. So if you operated off your preconceived notion of what a bin tree is, I don't know, this might have been more confusing, as opposed to just saying, look, here's a grammar, it's called whatever it's called. The only reason this guy's important is because that's what I call it in here. So if I called it elephant here, I need to reference it as elephants in here. So I have 2 productions. These are the two different ways that bin trees, or whatever I ended up calling them, how they can exist in the wild. All right, so that one makes more sense. Oh, so this would have been funny. See, if you sucked at this one, you didn't know what the heck this was. But I mean, I purposely gave you an easy grammar.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, now you see that it wasn't a hard grammar.
Yeah.
I thought I was being nice. I'm glad I wasn't, but I thought I was. It's a moment of weakness that seems like God righted the ship for me. It's like, look, you tried to make this easy, but I'm going to fix this for you. I'm gonna fix this up. What was this one? Write a procedure called sum tree, takes a bin tree as a parameter, return. So anytime you hit this just, you probably could do it as an if statement, right?
You gotta admit though, if you don't know what a bin tree is, that's a hard question.
No. We spent so much time writing code that just follows grammars.
But we never wrote code with the vertical line before. That's what got me. I don't know, that was so.
That's always all. That's never
But no,
not
it's
all.
double row. I don't think we ever wrote anything that had an if statement.
I feel like it's even in the slides.
I went through the slides.
Huh?
Went through the slides before everyone.
I feel like I had there was an example of a grammar in there, because I have like pictures from the book that I didn't make you buy, by the way. I'm too nice.
Yeah,
I saw that was a side.
It's not a Zyba.
Oh, it's not?
No, this is like a super famous book called Essentials of Programming Languages. Oh no, this is our slides. Yeah. Well, no, because it's in picture format. Oh, look at that. You know what? I bet you I even have that grammar from bin tree in here. Oh, look, here's another one. Oh, whoa. Whoa. Man, it gave you examples too. Look at this. This is, man, this is all kinds of suck. Well, what I'll do is since I'm so I'm guessing the only error I made on the exam was that very first question. Yeah, I'll give you 10 points back. I'll curve the exam 10 points because I figure if I can't write the question when I'm half asleep, I was so tired. Because I'm used to this really fancy bed at home with zero gravity and it self-adjusts, and I'm in my parents' guest room, and that just did not do it for me. And I have a butler at home, and I didn't have it there. You know how to do the milk, but he brings me chocolates. I got a guy. He brings me chocolates and, huh? No, that would be creepy. My wife and I are getting in bed, and Blade walks in a little butler outfit. It's Blade's brother. It's called a pathway to citizenship. See, now they're wondering, like, is he kidding? I don't know if he's kidding. He might not be kidding. We're calling this 60-40 at this point. All right. Yeah, so it seems like there was several examples with the bar in the middle.
Oh, no. Okay.
I mean, I've only hit the fourth picture.
So how we usually do the slides is that you take a point from the last semester's slides, and that's when we use our slides.
Right.
I tend to ignore things like that happened this year.
Well, yeah, but see, anything that's either on paper or came out of my mouth at some point in class, I mean, this includes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. I mean, anything is fair game. There's a new pizza place that just opened. It's a food truck type place in downtown Milwaukee, and I'm going to be putting up a review for on my Facebook page. And so they hired me to come down and do a review, and that's through one of my consulting businesses. So I don't have to give them a good review, but they pay me and I come and review it and whatever, because I have a zillion followers on my my business page. So I'm down there and they bring, so the pizza, you're sitting outdoors. I'm on this park bench, the one size fits all park bench. And they bring the pizza out. It's like in a container, so it's kind of like to go. And on the lid, they wrote words, and it says something like Ninja Turtle approved. They don't know me. I mean, that makes it a B+ minimum rating, regardless of what was in that box. Could have been a box of dirt. It was actually pretty good. I give it like an A-. Not life-changing pizza, not like gonna drive real far, but if I'm in the neighborhood and I feel like pizza, and I feel like sitting outside on a day when it's like 38 degrees and windy, I probably will go somewhere else. Yeah, the guy's like a chefy type guy, They're like 8-inch pizzas, but they're like homemade dough. I don't know if he like par bakes the dough ahead of time. Yeah, but I mean, it's like foo-foo-y. It's some kind of chef creation, and some like proprietary 4-cheese blend is his cheese thing, and 2 of the cheeses you can't pronounce, that kind of thing. So it was pretty good, but I mean, heck, I probably would go to Mequon Pizza Company or something. I think they have pretty solid pizza, but or Tommaso's in Cedarburg. They're actually the same pizzas. Mequon Pizza Company used to be Tommaso's. Yeah, they franchised it, and then as soon as that franchise agreement fell off, they no longer had to use the name. They probably, changed from 1 tablespoon of salt in the sauce to 1.0001 tablespoons of salt in the sauce, and technically met the non-compete requirement or something like that. But if you had the deep dish at Tommaso's and you've had the deep dish at Mequon Pizza Company, you're going to find them extremely similar. But they're solid pizza, especially around here. Yeah, so this guy is just our con that goes through the thing, and anytime we see the int, we're adding it to our sum, right? So that guy should have been easy. It's just killing me. What would the purpose of storing a lambda expression in our variable environment be? I think we even said this out loud in class. When we were talking about variable environments,
Yeah. I don't know.
we kind of were driving home the point of, name value pairs. It's a variable name associated with a value, and that value could be anything that you have in your language. And if we think about when we first looked at lambda expressions, we looked at like a Java example where we said, look, here's your function in Java. If we take the name of the function out, that's a lambda. You want to put the name of the function back in, now you're storing it in your variable environment. You're associating a name with that value, that's the function. Make sense? So this guy lets us have functions in our variable environment so that we can then call them later on with our, I think for us, it's called a call expression, right? For lambda expressions or lambda calculus expressions, LCE expressions, I think they call it a app expression or something like that. Write a procedure called apply GD. So this is probably the hardest one, right? Takes a list of positive numbers as a parameter and returns a new list of the same length with every number replaced by the largest integer that evenly divides it. Oh, actually, you could have used the function if you wanted to. You could have used the function you wrote up above, because that would give you a list of the things that evenly divide it. And then, so you, since you wouldn't have the number itself, what you would do is you would reverse it and take the catter, the second number from that list, second to last number from that list. But when I wrote it on the thing, I don't think I did that. So we're starting from the number that's one down from it, right? So if the number was 9, you're going to start counting from 8 to 7 to 6, trying to find the first number you bump into that evenly divides the number you're looking at. And then you're going to go through your original lists and cons the result of that function, given the current value you're looking at, onto an ongoing list until you finally run out of things to process. And I think I also wrote it, you can do this with a map as well, where you're just mapping that function across there. So that one shouldn't have been too bad either.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened.
It did
Well,
not- It did not go well.
it sounds like the major hangup was with grammars.
Yeah.
So this one was difficult because you didn't know how to read this dude. This one was difficult because you didn't know how to read this dude. I have no idea why this one was difficult. It seems like just if the word grammar or an example of grammar was involved, you were clueless. That one should have been easy, but I'm guessing many of you probably did it the long way.
Yeah,
The conversion. Do you see the trick you can do now?
yeah, it was.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that you were by the trick. Well, yeah. So that's the point is, so how many classes have you had with me where we've done the conversion stuff? So now again, we're back to that concept of critical thinking, right? And the point is you're supposed to be frustrated with it. I want you to do something, make it harder than it's supposed to be, then see the answer like, oh, all I had to do was that, because that pushes your abilities of critical thinking farther forward. You think about the stuff you found difficult in 200 right now. If you went back and did that now, they would be, a joke, right? They wouldn't be difficult for you anymore because you've matured in your learning, and now you still see that your critical thinking isn't perfect yet. Let's see. So this one, you didn't really know what occurs free and occurs bound meant. You remember that we covered it in class now, but in the moment you didn't recall that stuff. FizzBuzz should have been a hand me out, or a handout rather. List of divisors shouldn't have been bad. Minus, it said you thought that the helper function was something you didn't have to do. It was a misleading question. Should turn me into the Better Business Bureau. Get points back. No, so hey, I said, this is I'm gonna give you a secret for in your future, this, because this always works. And what put it in my head is this idea of misleading stuff. We got this coupon in the mail for what looked like a free oil change at this place for my wife's Honda. And she already has free oil changes where she got her car, which is like 45 minutes away. Well, this place is only like 15 minutes away, but it looks like a little check, right? Very misleading. Turned out in the reality, it was only like a $10 discount the way it worked, because of the number, the value of the thing was actually like, this is what you get a oil change for. Well, so, and this is something I've learned over the years. It doesn't make any sense to sit there and argue with the, the person who's, like, look, I just work here. I didn't send you this thing in the mail. And he was at Lenny at the place, was actually quite nice. He said, yeah, that seems pretty misleading, but I paid the bill, whatever there. But then I just go home and I file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. It takes 5 minutes. And 2 days later, I get a phone call from the place and they said, where do you want me to mail the refund check? Done. Always do that. Don't sit there and fight with people, especially the people that had nothing to do with it, right? Like, look, they're punching a clock. He showed up to work. He doesn't need to be screamed at over something that had nothing, he probably doesn't like his boss either. the guy who sent the thing. But Better Business Bureau, bbb.org. It's your friend. Don't be malicious though. I mean, only file complaints if it's like warranted. Like, look, I did not like the person who took my order at McDonald's. I wanted a latte from the McAfee, and I feel like I got a mocha. I distinctly tasted chocolate. What?
What's that person was screaming?
What, the McDonald's burger? Well, what do you expect the resolution to be?
Also, what do you expect of your standards are a little higher.
I mean, one time this happened with it's like a $4,000 electric bike from Amazon, where I ordered it, and the place that sent this like mostly broken bike. I mean, it was like salvageable, but it was like a used bike. It was missing some pieces and stuff like that. So they accepted well, first of all, I said, I tried to return it, and they said, well, we'll give you a 10% discount. Like, well, you sent me a broken bike. So then they say, oh, you can return it, but I had to pay the shipping to send it back. I'm like, well, that was ridiculous. But I figured, okay, I'll argue that with Amazon later. So I shipped this giant bike back. I was like $350 to ship the stupid thing. And well, then they rejected this place was trying to scam me, right? They rejected it and everything. Well, so in the end, I called up Amazon. I was on the, I trust. This is where I learned the lesson. Don't go through the place. And the people I talked to at Amazon were nice enough, but they kept handing you off to other people. Then like, oh, let us look into this. We'll get back to you on Tuesday. It never happened. So in the end, I went to Better Business Bureau, filed a complaint. 2 days later, Amazon has a whole department for resolving those things. So I got a full refund, including the $300 for the shipping, and I still have the bike. I mean, it was not worth what it was, but but it's worth more than, nothing. Well, the reviews for the company were actually pretty good. I'm guessing this was more of a weakness of whoever the distributor of that thing was. Probably somebody stealing under the table. I don't know. Doesn't matter. All right, so that's the exam. Shouldn't have been too bad. So I'll look at what the grades are, but I'll give you 10 points for this first one. I'll give you a free 10 points back. Not that this one was overly hard, but given the fact that I made a mistake on it, I shouldn't hold you accountable for something that I was able to make a mistake on. Although I probably would have given that answer, the answer I gave, probably like an 8 out of 10, just because everything was right, just inverted. That's fine. I'll give you 10 points back. And then once you see your grades, you can grovel and say, well, we need way more than 10 points. This is like we do like 75 points. 80 points. That would actually be funny. I would probably post that.
Would you give us like extra points for that if we go through the process?
Probably. Yeah, I might. Well, you'd have to find the business, so you would probably have to file it against Concordia, which would then go to some department at Concordia where then I would get like pulled in, and it's like we received this complaint from your students. Explain yourself.
Definitely.
I feel like this is the goal for Concordia, they just turn it down and do-
I would think that if there was actually a BBB complaint, I'm not suggesting you do this, first of all, but I mean, I would think that a place like Concordia would take any sort of BBB complaint pretty seriously, because the point of that is that it's to protect your reputation. Because when, if you're going to buy something from a place, especially if you're going to spend a bunch of money, a lot of times you might go to the Better Business Bureau and just look at their history. If you have a place that basically seems like they are pretty fast and loose with customer service, you might look at somebody else. But if they have an A-star rating with the Better Business Bureau, which they can still have even with the complaint, as long as they resolve the complaint, because misunderstandings happen and all that stuff. But I would think a place like Concordia would take it pretty seriously. A place like Amazon probably doesn't have to take it seriously, but really does. I mean, because you're stuck. You have to order from Amazon, right? You don't really have a legitimate competitor for probably 70% of your orders. It's like, okay, I could pay 30% more and I have to put pants on to go drive to a store. that's a no-go. that's not happening. Mm.
All this is unrecorded too.
What's this?
All this is unrecorded.
I know, but what do you?
Let's bring Concordia on the-
Well, it probably wouldn't happen. His Better Business Bureau also like filters, like it goes to an actual human being there, who then delivers that something. They would filter it out if it was like, students complaining they got a B. I think that the Better Business Bureau said, look, this isn't our department. You might want to talk to the provost or something, or maybe you start with your teacher. All right, any other questions about the exam? Okay, so I will get those graded this afternoon. Like I said, I have a chunk of time. I have one more question to grade on my 200 exams, and this class isn't that big, so I'll probably do this one. Actually, I'll probably do my 300 class next, because I have that class tomorrow morning, but I anticipate being able to get all of them done this afternoon. So you'll see how good or bad it is. I will probably have the raw score up, and I'll probably create another column for the bonus. Any curve I have, unless it's a bigger curve, I'll have to figure it out. But what you'll see is going to be your raw score without any curve. I already told you I'll give you 10 points. So that means if you earned an 80, that should be a 90. You're going to see an 80. So you can add 10 points to whatever you got. Okay, so let's see. Where did we leave off? Didn't we have some homework assignment we needed to? Isn't it?
Having multiple, yeah.
Yeah.
having multiple-
Yeah, combining the requirements for the environment and your environment.
You already talked about it a lot.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Oh, this guy. So add the ability to have let expressions into our language where a let has a list of two lists. Oh, this is the one beforehand. Update our interpreters support functions within functions that should not use the updated environment. An example of one of these is in the current code in Slack, on Slack. Okay, so do I have, it's still highlighted, so I'm guessing this is the, why would I? You just gotta roll with it. What's the worst that happens? It crashes on you, gotta rewrite it? I save it sometimes. Usually it's just faster to rewrite it than to hit save.
You said you had 64 gigabytes.
It's something ridiculous. Like, and then everyone moves on to, like,
And 2.4 gigabytes.
I got to get a new one though. I'm going to get one of the new MacBook Pros, I think. With the M1 Pro Max chips with 64 gigs of unified memory and 32 core GPU and yeah, actually it's fascinating. The new architecture from Apple is really, it's the future of chips. Intel's way behind right now, but they're putting everything. So historically what we've had is you had computers that had all these, so like when, have you guys had the 325 class?
Yeah.
Okay, so with computer organization, you know, you have your processor talks to system memory over a bus, right? So there's a connection. So that's like the highway between those two. And doesn't matter how fast your RAM is and how fast your CPU is, you're still limited by how fast you can drive on that highway, right? So is like a first example with this. So what we did is we started doing embedded systems where instead of having a motherboard with these things, you started soldering things directly to each other. So you still had a bus, but the bus had a lot faster speed. What Apple's doing, they're saying, okay, here's the processor, but if we just make that a little bigger, now everything's there. So they have something called unified memory. So the memory is actually a component of the CPU. So you can get 64 gigs of RAM that's linked directly to the CPU. It's still farther away from the CPU than a hardware register, so it's going to be slower because of that. But it's like 400 gigabytes a second transfer speed for your RAM, your 64 gigs, and then it's that memory though is shared. So that 64 gigabytes of RAM is shared between the CPU as well as the GPU. So technically, if you were doing something super GPU intensive and super CPU intensive, you could run out of memory more quickly than you would in a traditional system. But our modern super crazy high-end GPUs have like 12 gigs of memory on it. So you're talking 64 gigs of unified extra fast memory compared to 76 gigs of significantly less fast memory. So I think it still comes out better, but their performance of everything on that single processor effectively is for the GPU side is pretty close to a NVIDIA 3080. Now, if you've ever seen an NVIDIA 3080 chip or any of the, you know, any of the big GPUs, I mean, they're probably about that long, that tall, and probably that thick, with fans out the wazoo and stuff like that, where this whole thing is, you know, the whole processor, the whole caboose is that, and, you know, super thin. So it allows them to have these, you know, these laptops now that can be, you know, 90% battery, super thin, but then on top of everything else, the power consumption of those processors is like a fourth of what it is for a lot of the other things. So like I use the example, I have a, and this is the next generation of the M1 processors, so that they just announced last week. So I have an M1 MacBook Air, and if I'm on a Zoom meeting with that, at the end of an hour-long Zoom meeting on battery, I'm at 99% battery life. If I'm on this one on that same Zoom meeting, I'm at like 70% battery life. So basically the battery is infinite. If they just put a little solar thing on the back, the back of the thing, I think you probably could have infinite battery. Yeah.
So did Apple basically create
Apple's been making their own silicon for a while now. So they've just been moving everything towards, I mean, Apple dumped the idea of expandability years ago. So you haven't been able to add memory. So today, if you buy a Mac, you better pay to put as much memory in there as you ever want, because that's what you're stuck with. So you end up having this, nice integrated, everything's, really well built and stuff like that at twice the price, or more than twice the price probably. Well, it's a pretty nice machine. But you know what? The half price machine will still get you to work. If you think about like a car, you get a dumpy Chevy that's reliable versus a Cadillac, both get you to work. One of them you get to sit in the back seat because you got a driver, but Blade's brother. What's up?
I was gonna say, did Apple then integrate their memory then, or
Yeah, all of it.
all of it?
The entire computer is built into the CPU,
Oh my goodness.
including hard drive. Yeah, I mean, so the solid state drive is on the CPU platter. Yeah, the processor is ridiculous. If you go online and you look at some of the benchmarks for it, I mean, certain things it's less impressive, but
That must be a really long process.
well, relative to processors, yes, but relative to the space that all those other things used to take up, it's probably a tenth of it. So I really think, but now what we need is Intel to learn from that so that they can have their next generation of processors be able to compete.
Well, how computer guys like me do to back up or extract the hard drive and then they integrate?
Well, you haven't been able to do that on a Mac for years, minus, taking like a putty knife and prying iMacs open. And if you're going to do it on a laptop, it's going to be way worse.
Yeah.
And Apple Watches, and the smaller the device gets, Apple just hands you a new device. Like, we'll just go and we'll scrap this one. give it to we'll get it working at some minimum level again and just hand it out in Guatemala or something.
I just want to think that hard drive.
Well, yeah, you say that's the best thing, but it also made it slow
Yeah.
and crappy and all these other things.
Well, there's some with SSD now.
Yes, fast, but not as fast as they could. Got to have more speed. That's why I replace my laptop every 4 weeks. Usually I actually have not actually rebooted a computer before I get rid of it. Or hit save, either of those. All right, let's look at this. I do. That's like my one thing. Grew up at the right time with the right profession. All right, so the idea here is we want to have, so let's walk through how this guy should work. So we're going to call a function. So here's our function. Do I have all right, so here's the function I'm calling. So I want to bind this 5 to this A. All right, so this A is going to get bound to a 5. But then the body of this guy, I'm calling a function, passing in the current value of A, which is 5, in for a variable called R. Right? And then I'm going to boil down to 10 here. Let's see, A started off as 7. I want to make sure my example here is a good example. So A used to be 7. I'm going to now supersede that by binding the 5 to the A. So I'm going to have a more local variable of that guy. Then I'm going to pass in the current value of A, which is a 5, and for R. Is this a good example? I feel like this isn't the example code I would have given you for the homework. I would have given you something like that. with an A there.
That's what you gave us.
Well, let me see. The result should be a 7, not a 5. Because this guy, the result is always going to be a 10 because it's a hard coded 10. Right? I mean, that's what this inner function does. Doesn't matter what the current value of A was at any point in time. But if I put A here, so let's go with that. If I put A here, that's the body of this inner call. This outer guy here, 5 got passed in for A. So now I have a more local variable of A in my environment. So currently in my environment, I have an A equals 7. And this was the assignment dealing with adding scopes, right? Because now we need to have scopes in our environment so we can operate off of those guys. So I pass in a 5 for A. So now I have a more local scope in my environment. So this is the global scope. I'll have a more local one that now has a variable defined as A equals 5, right? Fine. So, but then in the body of this function, the body of this function is operating in this expanded environment. That is the environment that, by this example, has 2 scopes. It has the most local scope, which has a variable A equals 5. And then it has the more global scope, which is all this crap. That's the more global scope. All right. But now when I call this function and I pass it my current value of A, which is 5 in for R, that's going to create a more local scope called R, right? With R in it, that should have R is equal to 5. But now the body of this guy, so I'm going to actually draw these guys. So right now, didn't I copy this? Or maybe I didn't actually copy it. Maybe I just allowed it to highlight. All right, so that guy's a scope, and now I have a A5 scope. And now I have an R5 scope. All right. So if I follow through this, my original global scope was just this guy. As soon as I called this first function, I bound 5 to A, creating this new, more local scope, A equals 5. Okay, no problem. Now, when I call this inner function, binding, let's see. Binding A to R with the body of it. No, hold on. I had this right. Yeah. So I bound the current value of A, which is 5, to R, which gave me a new scope, R is equal to 5, in which the body of this guy is going to execute it, which is currently A. Now, the issue we run into here, as I have it written right now, remember, we have this rule that all variables boil down to their most local definition. So when I get to the body of this inner call and I say, I need to resolve the value of A, I'm going to go to my variable environment, which currently might look like this. So we're going to call this our problematic variable environment. This would be the easy way of trying to do this assignment, right? Just, every single time I run into a new variable environment, every single time I have a new call, I create a scope, I push it onto the top of my variable environment. Brand new variable environment, okay? So I have something that looks like this. So this is my fictitious variable environment here where I actually have 3 scopes represented. This is the most recent scope that R equals 5. This is the next most recent scope. And this is the most global scope, this last guy. That guy. Okay. So now when I get into the body of this inner call and I say, oh, I need to resolve this variable. And like I said, all variables resolve to their most local definition. So I'm going to check in my most local scope first and say, is there a variable in here named A? There's not. So I'll pop that guy off a stack of scopes, if you want to think of it like that. And I'll get to my next erroneous most local environment. And I'll say, is there a variable in here named A? There is, and its value is 5. So this will boil down to 5, but it shouldn't. And so let me write the way this would look in Java. All right. Just to drive this point home of how these guys should look. It's going to allow me to write Java stuff in here. Let's just pretend like it will. So we're going to have a, well, actually, I'll just write kind of pseudocode stuff. So we have a func called A, and this guy takes in a parameter called, we'll call this guy F1 actually. And he's going to take in a parameter, what's my first call? Called A. And the body of that will be to call, curly braces, just to drive this point home. And he's going to call F2 in here, passing it the current value of A. It doesn't matter what order I put it in here. So I'm going to create a second function, func F2, and func F2 takes in a variable R as a parameter. And what's he going to boil down to? He's going to boil down to the current value of A. So maybe I'll do something like, print A or something like that. Okay. Now we'll write our main up here somewhere. So here we'll have our func main. And this guy is going to something like int A is equal to 7 up here in our global environment. And this guy will just make a call to F1, passing it a 5. All right, so this is effectively, and even though I know I have a bunch of other variables in here, if I want to just cut this down. Oh, yeah. That's really what I'm dealing with in my current example, because I'm not using age or B or C or anything. So I have a global variable named A named A. It's equal to 7. What does my program do? All programs begin and end with main. So what am I doing in here? I'm calling my function F1, which is this guy right here. F1 takes in a single parameter named A, and all he does is he calls my second function, F2, passing it whatever A was. So that's what I have right here. All right. So this is my function F2. So this guy takes in whatever A was here, which is a 5. So 5 got bound to this A. Then I'm calling F2, passing at the most local value of A, which is 5. 5 is coming in here as R, but I'm printing out the current value of A. If I look at this function, This guy here does not have access to the scope found in that function. Doesn't work that way in Java, right? Doesn't work that way in any programming language. These guys are separate scopes. So from the perspective of this function right here, if I'm saying print out the value of A, the only A he knows about, he can't find a local one, right? So he doesn't have a variable A there or anything like that. So the only A he knows about is this global A, which is 7. So he should print out a 7. All right, make sense? All right. So, but as I have it right now, when I get into F2, this is my entire environment. And the way functions resolve is the way variables resolve is we say, okay, we need the value of A. Let's check in our most local environment. Is there an A in there? There is. Or I'm sorry, there isn't. So are we out of luck? No, we have other places we can look. So we pop that environment off, and now we go and look at the next, in this case, erroneous most local environment. I do find an A in there, and this guy would print a 5 by error, right? He would print out a 5 because he did find a variable A in this scope stack. But the variable A he found was the one left over from this new scope created right there. All right, that makes some sense? All right, so while it might be easy to say every single time we find a function, we need to go ahead and just pop off the previous function, the previous scope. But if we did that from F1's perspective, we would have lost our global environment, right? So we don't want to lose our global environment. So I need to have a way of having a list of scopes, but know that when I enter a brand new scope, previous, let's call them temp scopes, get burned off. That makes some sense? So if I had my environment, I'm just going to copy this and bring this down. Hopefully some lights just went off in your head maybe when I said temp scope. Not yet. Hasn't fired yet. So let's just start. Okay, that's fine. So let's walk through this. So I have that's my original way, my global. So I'm going to call F1 at bucket, F1 passing it a 5, which is now going to create a more local scope. But I'm making a function call here. Okay, function calls happen through one mechanism, one production in our grammar. Okay, which is our call one. So since I'm calling a function, a new scope will be born, but we're going to make him kind of a specialty scope. So I'm going to create a binding in here. So maybe this guy has the word temp at the front of it. I'm just making something up right now, but let's just throw temp at the front of it. And then I'll go ahead and I'll say, we'll put our, what did I do? A is equal to 5, right? A 5, like that. All right, so even though here I have something that looks like this, and if I really wanted to label it, I could always put global in the front of this final guy. In fact, I could even do that. I could say, look, I'm not going to put temp in front of these dudes, but I'll never burn global. So you could go the other direction. You could say, look, any scope that's more local, I'm going to start popping off until I'm just down to the bare bones of my program, which is the global scope. In fact, that might even be a better solution to this. We might say our initial guy is global, and then make our more local scopes just look normal, like this. All right, so this guy is kind of this special thing. He's available anywhere inside my program. He's always a place I can look, is this global scope. All right, so I've gone ahead, I've created this new scope here, A equals 5. because I bound 5 to this variable A. Now inside here, when I make my F2 call, I want to execute this line of code inside of a variable environment. But that variable environment should only have in it the scopes that this guy has access to, which in this case should only be global. Any new scopes that I've gained as part of this need to be burned off. Okay, that doesn't mean that on the very next line here, he won't still have, you know, if he wanted to print out A in here, let's say, because I am creating an interpreter that's an environment passing interpreter. So I'm not saying, you know what, I'm just going to kill off my scope for this guy so that when I get to this line, A is now broken. I'm just saying I'm going to execute this line here in a modified scope. That is the scope with everything but the global environment burned off. So this guy execute in env consisting of only global. So in our example here, that'll be that guy. So I'm going to have maybe a helper function in part of my environment stuff that just says burn to global or something like that. Okay. And that guy will process my current variable environment and just start tossing away scopes until he finally gets to a scope whose car is the word global. Now, I didn't change. I'm going to just copy this right here. This guy right here is executing in env consisting of that dude, because he got a more local scope, right? He got the scope that bound A to 5. This guy should execute in that environment. So when I go to call F2 here, I'm going to pass that guy, because that's a call to my interpreter. I'm going to pass it the environment in which he should execute. And that is the environment with, well, that burns off to leave only the global environment. That's just going to be a helper function that just keeps removing scopes, right? Until you're down to the thing whose car of the car is the word global, right? So this dude, and then I'll create my new binding for this guy's local thing. So when I get down here, I have this environment this guy's executing it. When I say print A, it's going to check this first scope, not find anything. Then it's going to say, oh, I'll check my next scope right here, treating our global scope as kind of a specialty thing because it's going to have an extra word in there, right? And then say, oh, I did find an A. So I'm going to print out 7. Now, when this code ends and we revert control back to here, this call to our interpreter was still operating off of that environment. I didn't have to go and fix it. This is just built, it's part of the recursion, right? When I recursively called my interpreter here, I passed it the environment in which he should execute. The scope I have right here is still this environment. So when I return control here and I say print A, he's still going to print out 5. That makes sense? And then he'll finish, and then his scope will burn off, and then we'll back to this guy, where if I were to print A in here, I don't think we have like a block function. Do we have a block function yet that'll do a bunch of things in a row? Okay, we'll put that in soon. But so at this point, I'm writing some code that our current interpreter is not capable of. I can't do 2 things in a row. I can daisy chain things together, but I can't do separate things. But this still drives the point home, I hope. So when I print out A here, this guy was executing only in that environment. So he's going to print out a 7. That makes some sense. All right, so does that give you some more insight into maybe how to do this one? All right, so why don't we do this? For what day is today? Thursday? Okay, so for Tuesday, go back to the previous assignment, fix it up to implement it this way. I don't think it's gonna be very hard. Now that you see an approach, I mean, we're talking to help. You already wrote it to support scopes, right? You already got scopes. All you're talking about here is a helper function to burn to global. And then your resolve function just needs to make sure it treats it. It doesn't try to resolve the word global. If you really want to make it easy, you could just say that I have a reserved word where you can never create a variable named global and just have that as one of the, the variables in there, but you'll still have to check for it. I'd still put it just as the car like this. All right, here, I'll put this up on, you could, but I don't think you want to think about it like that. I think you want to burn to global. That way you're not trying to play games with, oh, well, do I only get global here or do I get global plus one more thing? Just when you have a call function, burn to global. Doesn't matter how many things have somehow gotten stacked up there by the craziness of whatever. When I switch to a new scope, only dude I have access to, because if we think about Java, you could have a for loop in there, which does actually give you 2 scopes ahead of global inside of a same function, right? So really you're just saying when I switch to a new function, a new call, all I have access to is the global environment. Any local crap that was created is out the door. So just burn off until you get to the one scope that's global. Make some sense? So I'll post this up here. And I'll update the due date for that previous assignment. I'm trying to think, what's the best way to do it? Yeah, let's just do that. I'll update the due date for that one. Questions, comments, concerns, bribes? Bribe? Yeah, redo the last assignment to work this way. So does that seem easier now that you maybe I think it should be substantially easier.
Yeah,
Any Mattins?
no.
Okay.
That was on Monday?
Oh, so I missed it.
Yeah, you missed that.
Oh, that's right. I was here that day and I knew it was Mattins.